They're having a discussion about that in Washington, D.C. right now, presided over by Ted Stevens, who's the senior senator from Alaska, and he's trying to reduce the amount of trawlers in the North Pacific Ocean. And it's just a, somebody better start doing something pretty soon, or you can kiss Alaska wild salmon goodbye, which I think would be a tragedy.
Certainly would. Well, that is likely a territory you will revisit. But some of the other things that you have dealt with in the books, number 5, Play with Fire, I mentioned the radical right and the radical left, but the environmental thing in there was a forest fire that had, in fact, cleared the way so that it was a morel mushroom boom.
Yep, based on a true story.
Absolutely fascinating. There again, naive me, I didn't realize what a cash crop morel mushrooms were.
God, yes. Yeah, the buyers fly in. There are people out there looking after a dry summer and forest fires. If there's a wet spring, if the following spring is even just remotely damp, boy, they're there looking. And the word goes out, and people take their 5-gallon buckets and their pocket knives up there, and they start harvesting them because you can pull down big bucks doing that. It's not a fun job. It'll hurt your back. You're out there all day. You're filling up these 5-gallon buckets, but the season doesn't last that long, and you can pick up a few cash dollars along the way. Help you, refit your fishing gear.
Well, it blended very well with the story. Is that an afterthought? I mean, first do you think of the story and then it just works out well that this particular environmental theme fits in, or does it tend to go the other way around? You want to write about the place and the mushrooms and then you craft a story that works there?
I generally start with the setting first, and then I think of the people to go in the setting, and then I figure out what kind of trouble they can get up to. So I had read about the fire up around Glen Ellen. Excuse me. Like I said, it actually did happen. We did have a huge, tremendous forest fire up there. And there was this huge morel boom crop. And there was considerable about it in the papers, as you might expect. And I mean, everybody was heading up the road to, cash in on it if they possibly could. And I thought, well, I wonder what's going to happen if they stumble onto something. And then guess what? 2 years ago, we had a really, really dry summer. This would be 96. Mm-hmm. And Play with Fire came out in 95. In 96, we had this huge, enormous wildfire where we tried to burn down south central Alaska. Guess what they find in the flames? A dead body, whom they have yet to identify.
I love it. Real life mirrors.
Yeah.
Well, we've talked about any number of interesting issues, but I understand. And you'll love the way this information came to me, not from you, oh faithful email correspondent, but from your book artist, who sent me an email and said if I were going to be talking to you, that I was to be sure to compliment you because he had been commissioned to do the cover for your new book series. First time I know about this.
I thought I told you, I'm sorry.
And what was interesting was he said that Dana being a unisex name, that he had no clue until he had read my issue of the book news that you were coming here, that you were a woman, because when he read this book with a male protagonist and all, he was absolutely convinced that you were a guy, that this was, so I thought
guess
that
that's
was
kind of a compliment.
He meant it as a compliment, and I thought it really was, so that's why I'm paying it to you. I have not read this book yet, but tell us a little bit in our closing minutes here about your new series.
Well, it's it's set in Alaska, but it's in a different part of Alaska in Bristol Bay. And it features a state trooper named Liam Campbell and a bush pilot named Wynette Chouinard. It's sort of a couple series. And it's darker, and it's sexier, and it's a bigger book series than the Kate Shugag series is. Liam moved, a very capable, very able trooper that he was, moved up in the organization high and fast to sergeant, but then someone screwed up under his command. And so the buck stopped on his desk, and so he was busted back to trooper and transferred to Newenham, which is my fictional town in Bristol Bay, in disgrace. And he steps off the plane onto the tarmac at the airport of Newenham and discovers that someone has walked into the prop of a Piper Super Cup.
Ooh, how messy.
And kneeling over the body is his old flame, Wynette Chouinard.
Ooh, great opening scene.
Chapter 1.
I'm hooked already.
Yeah, I'm real pleased that your artist friend has told you that, because I was a little nervous about writing in the male voice, but when I got to the end of the book, and Y and Liam are having this argument where they're talking at each other instead of to each other, just like real men and women do. And I thought, yes, I can do this. So it's nice to know that he thinks so too.
Well, He's the cover artist for Tony Hillerman and Thomas Perry, so it isn't like he hasn't had. And do you know what he said I thought was immensely comforting? Was that he had read the book. Because I think there is some speculation every once in a while when you look at a book jacket and you think,
no,
what?
Yeah, where did that come from?
Yeah, I was very cheered to know that he actually reads the books before he designs the covers. But what is the title and when can we look for this?
The title of the first book is Fire and Ice, and it comes out in October.
Wow.
I don't have an actual date yet, but they say October. So.
Is this with a different publisher than Putnam?
Dutton.
It's with Dutton, so in the same house,
it's in the same house, but a different imprint, yes.
And are you anticipating, what have you signed, like a 2 or 3 book contract?
3-book contract, yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hard soft, so that we'll see paperbacks as well?
Yes.
That's very exciting.
Mm-hmm. I'm excited about it. I'm real happy about it.
Do you think that will help even more in keeping your series fresh if you can move back and forth?
Yes, I think it will. I mean, always assuming that the Liam Y series takes off, yeah. I mean, I would love to write the books on alternate years, yeah. And especially since, you know, the series is different. The series, it's going to be different in tone and different in kind, and it's going to be set in Alaska, so naturally, you know, there are going to be some similarities. But like I say, the Liam series is going to be darker and sexier and bigger books.
Are you going to keep them both as Dana Stabenow rather than adopt some
so
stupid pseudonym?
So far, I haven't been too embarrassed to, you know, own up to anything I've written. So
it's not so much that, is that I think that publishers have some idea that it helps preserve identities if you change the author's name.
They seem to think that my name helps with the sales, to keep my, there was never any suggestion of it. I mean, not from my agent, not from my editor. I don't know how I would have felt about it if they'd wanted me to do that. I mean, other authors do.
Well, it can go both ways, but
yeah.
I find that it usually ends up at that you have something like Ruth Rendell writing as Barbara Vine,
yes,
and then I think, why are we doing this? So, you know, you've saved a lot of bookstore nightmares there for us.
My pleasure.
I thank you, and I want to thank you so much for coming down, and now I have hopes that we might actually see you more often if we're going to have a second book. But
Works
Dana,
for me.
Thank you very much for coming and joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
And thanks to all of you, once again, for coming to join us for a session of the Criminal Calendar.